The Town Mouse and the Country Mouse. In a small green field near a big forest lived a little mouse named Marvin. Marvin was a country mouse. He had soft brown fur and bright black eyes. Marvin lived in a cozy hole under an old oak tree. Marvin loved his simple life in the country. Every day he woke up early to watch the sunrise. He enjoyed the fresh air and the sound of birds singing. For breakfast, Marvin ate seeds and berries he found in the field. One day, Marvin got a letter. It was from his cousin Tommy. Tommy was a town mouse who lived in a big city. The letter said, "Dear Marvin, I hope you are well. Life in the city is exciting. There's so much to see and do. Why don't you visit me? You'll love it here. Your cousin, Tommy." Marvin was excited. He had never been to the city before. He packed a small bag with some country cheese and fresh berries. Then he started his journey to the city. After walking for a long time, Marvin finally reached the big city. He was amazed by what he saw. There were tall buildings, bright lights, and so many people. Marvin felt a little scared. Tommy met Marvin at the city park. Tommy wore a tiny red scarf and looked very fancy. He said, "Welcome to the city, cousin. You're going to love it here. Let me show you around." Tommy took Marvin on a tour of the city. They saw big shops, fast cars, and street performers. Marvin had never seen so many exciting things before. But he also noticed that the air wasn't as fresh as in the country, and it was very noisy. In the evening, Tommy took Marvin to his home. Tommy lived in a hole in the wall of a big house. The hole was behind a large cupboard in the kitchen. Tommy said, "This is where I live. It's much better than your little hole in the country." Marvin looked around. Tommy's home was bigger than his, but it didn't feel as cozy. There were no flowers or trees nearby. Marvin couldn't see the stars from here. Tommy said, "Let's have dinner. I'll show you the delicious food we have in the city." He led Marvin to the kitchen table. On the table were plates full of food. There was cheese, bread, cake, and fruits that Marvin had never seen before. Tommy said, "Go on, try some." Marvin took a small bite of cheese. It tasted different from his country cheese, but it was good. He tried a piece of cake. It was very sweet. Marvin had never tasted anything like it. As they were eating, they heard a loud noise. It was the cat. Tommy shouted, "Quick, run!" They ran as fast as they could back to Tommy's hole. Marvin's heart was beating fast. He said, "That was scary. Does this happen often?" Tommy laughed. "Oh yes, but that's part of the excitement of city life. You never know what will happen next." That night, Marvin couldn't sleep well. The city was never quiet. He heard cars honking, people talking, and music playing all night long. He missed the peaceful sounds of the country. The next morning, Tommy took Marvin to a restaurant. They hid under a table and ate crumbs of delicious food that people dropped. But they had to be very careful not to be seen by the humans or the restaurant's cat. After lunch, they went shopping. Tommy showed Marvin the big stores with shiny windows. But Marvin noticed that Tommy was always looking around nervously, watching for cats or people who might step on them. By the end of the day, Marvin was tired. He said to Tommy, "Thank you for showing me the city. It's very exciting, but I think I'm ready to go home now." Tommy was surprised. "But don't you want to stay longer? There's so much more to see." Marvin shook his head. "The city is interesting, but it's not for me. I miss my quiet home, and the fresh air. I like knowing I'm safe from cats and big feet." Tommy nodded. He understood that different mice like different things. He said, "I'll miss you, cousin, but I'm glad you visited. Come back any time." The next morning, Marvin started his journey back to the country. As he walked, the noisy city sounds faded away. He began to hear birds singing and leaves rustling in the wind. When Marvin finally reached his little hole under the oak tree, he felt very happy. He breathed in the fresh country air and looked at the beautiful green field. Marvin thought about his adventure in the city. He was glad he went. He had seen many new things and tasted different food, but he was even happier to be home. That night, Marvin ate a simple dinner of seeds and berries. It wasn't as fancy as the city food, but it tasted wonderful to him. He fell asleep listening to the gentle sound of crickets chirping. The next day, Marvin wrote a letter to Tommy. "Dear Tommy, thank you for showing me the city. It was very exciting. But I realized that I love my quiet country life. I'm happy with my simple food and peaceful home. I hope you'll visit me someday and see how nice the country can be. Your cousin, Marvin." Marvin learned that it's good to try new things, but it's also okay to love what you already have. He was thankful for his cozy hole, the beautiful nature around him, and the safe, peaceful life in the country. From that day on, Marvin appreciated his home even more. He enjoyed every sunrise, every bird song, and every tasty seed he found. And sometimes, when he ate a particularly good berry, he thought of Tommy and smiled, grateful for both his adventure and his simple country life. The end.